So now we're back with part 2 of our space shooter game, and in this one we're going to create our first enemy and make it have hits and make it be damaged by the player laser and destroy it, of course, and then of course shoot back at the player. So I guess we're going to recap real quick. We have a player object that has a bunch of things. We set speed, move left and right, and then we fire a laser, and the laser object just starts moving when it gets created. So it starts moving up when it gets created. It gets outside the room, it gets destroyed. So now we're going to add first a sprite for the first enemy, so we'll call it enemy 1. And just like last time, we're going to edit this image and we're going to bring in the image from a strip, and we're going to use that same sprite sheet we've been using. Our first enemy is going to be this guy right here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in to try to get an idea as to where we're at. I can also click, remember. So to kind of get us set here, this is where we're going to click, and I make sure that my box is around what I need it to be around. It is going to be the same size as our player, which, if you remember, is 32 by 32. And then when we back up, we have 4 frames of our enemy here. It doesn't have something coming out the back. It has this little, if you notice, it's a little hard to see, but it's really just this animation of red kind of circling around in the front. So, but we do want 4 frames and 4 per row. So now once we have that, oops, I clicked in the wrong spot though. We wanted 160 for the vertical pixel offset. We go ahead and click convert, click yes, and we have our enemy, and we just need to remove the color around it just like we did from the player. So we do that for all the frames, and then we're done here. We can close this part out and then change the origin to middle center. And now we're going to go ahead and create the object. And with this one, we're going to set up some things for a little bit later. So we set up the object with the new sprite. We're going to add a create event. And in the create event, we're going to go ahead and add in our variable to keep track of the enemy's hits. And so we're going to give it 3 hits to begin with. And that's going to be how many times we can hit it before we destroy it. Okay. Then what happens is we have to check on this constantly to see have the hits been reduced to 0. And if they have been, then we need to destroy the enemy. So I'm going to add a step event. And in the step event, we're going to use an if variable to check if the hits variable, and we're going to go ahead and just make sure we hedge our bets, that we get less or equal to 0. Again, we are kind of in control of hits, but we're not totally in control of it, so I'm going to hedge my bets and use less or equal instead of just a straight up equal. And the only thing we're going to do if hits are less than or equal to 0 is to destroy the current instance. And so I'm just going to drag a destroy instance block there and put it inside the if variable. Okay. Then what I need to do is go to the player laser object, and we're going to add a new event for a collision with the enemy. And in this one is where we're going to reduce the enemy's hits by 1 every time the laser hits it. And we know we can access variables in another object by using the name dot object value. However, in this case, because we're using an instance, or because we have an enemy that will have multiple instances of on the screen. We don't want to access all of those at once. We just want to access the one that is for the enemy we're hitting. So I'm going to add an assign variable, which we were going to use anyway. But in the assign variable, I'm not going to put obj enemy 1 dot hits. I'm going to instead click the down arrow here and click on the other option for what to apply this to. So when I click on that, I can choose what to apply to, and this one I'm applying to other. So I'm applying to the, in this case, with a collision, it's the other object that I'm colliding with. Then I would use it just as if I was creating this in the other object. Okay, so we're going to do hits, and then we're going to do -1 and relative. Okay, so that should take 1 away from the hits of the player, or of the enemy, I should say. And then let's test and see that hitting the enemy 3 times kills them. So I'm going to go ahead and make it easier on my guy, and put him right there. I'm going to start the game. We're going to fire the laser. Remember that we shoot 2 lasers at once. So when I shoot the first time, I'm shooting 2 lasers that both hit. Oh, and away they went. Oh, you know what I didn't do? Is we need to destroy the player laser when we hit the enemy. So that's what the problem is. So I need to add a destroy instance with that. Now, here we go. Let's try this again. So we add a destroy instance, and now hit once, and really hit twice because that's 2 lasers, and then the third time I hit. And I can verify that by actually scooting over a little bit so that one of the lasers misses. And we can verify that it works on 3, but it also works for 4, which is nice. But let's see, did I get it? Hope I got both of them there. Let's try it now. Yep, there we go. There was a third one. So that's working. Now we can actually make the laser, or make the enemy's laser, and have it shoot back at the player. And if we're going to do that, we might as well set it up so that the player has hits as well and can be destroyed by the enemy's laser. So first thing though we need is a new laser. So we need to create a new sprite. SPR enemy laser. This one we're going to use the same laser for both enemies. So I'm not going to make a specific laser for enemy 1. We'll just use the same laser for both. Okay. Again, edit the image. Go into image and import from strip. Use the sprite sheet. This time we're going to use the red laser here that is in a similar position as the blue laser was. We're not going to use the whole thing like I guess we are going to use the whole thing. It's going to start, it starts at the same spot, I believe. So it's going to be, because if these are all 5 pixels wide, it should be 15 horizontal pixel offset, and then 65 is the vertical pixel offset, which is what I'm expecting. And then we just need to adjust. So we only have 1 frame per row. I'm adjusting the frames per row first, because if I adjust the number of frames first, it'll actually change it back for me, which will kind of defeat the purpose. So frame width is 5. Our frame height is, if I remember right, it is 7. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 indeed. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in. You notice these are set up so that they're shooting one direction or the other. So this is kind of set up for us. So we're all set to go, I believe. I'm going to convert. Click yes, and there we are. And again, we're going to do what we did with the blue laser, and that's remove the corners. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and exit out of here. We're going to set its origin to top center because we're shooting down at the player. So the player's laser was shooting up at the enemy. So we decided instead to do bottom center for that one. But because this one is shooting down at the player, we'll make this one top center for the origin. Now we'll create a new object. enemy laser. And just like the player laser object, we're going to add a create event. And we'll go ahead and make the laser move at the same speed but down. So we're still going to move vertical speed, but this time we won't use the negative, we'll use a positive 4. We'll also remember to add the outside room event. So that's under other. The outside room event to destroy the laser when it gets outside the room, just like we did with the player laser. But now we need to make it so that the player gets damaged by the laser and eventually is destroyed. So we're going to go ahead and first go to the player object, and in the create event, we're going to go there. I'm going to add a new variable by clicking the plus. We're going to call this one hits, and we're going to give it 5 hits to begin with. That's so we can quickly test for one thing. We can always adjust it later, so that's nice. But now we're going to go to the enemy laser, double click on it, add the event for the, I guess you know what we didn't do? We didn't set up the player to be destroyed. So we're going to add the step event real quick. And then do our check just like we did with the enemy. Check hits. Check if hits is less or equal to 0. And then destroy the instance. And for right now, this is all we're going to do. We'll dress it up a whole lot later with other animations and things. But here we go. We have that set up. Now we'll go to the enemy laser. And we're going to add an event for the, let's see, we need the collision with the player. And just like we did before, we are going to do 2 things. One is assign the variable, and again we need to click the little down arrow and then click the other option to change a variable in the other object, the object we're colliding with. In this case it's the variable called hits, and we're doing a -1 and a relative. And then this time I'm remembering to destroy the instance when it hits the player so it doesn't just destroy the player. Okay. Now we need to have the actual enemy fire at the player. And we're going to change this eventually, but right now I just want to get it working so that we can see the enemy shooting, and then we can test whether the player is destroyed when hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the player, to the enemy. And one thing we're going to do is I'm going to go to this enemy sprite real quick and zoom way in here to get an idea. Actually, I'm going to edit image so we can see it even clearer. So remember, our origin for the enemy is 1616. That's right here. And just like we did for the player, we're going to choose a spot relative to this point to shoot or to start lasers at. Now the difference is the laser cannons here on the enemy are 4 pixels wide, and so there's no way that we can center it exactly in the middle of this. So we'll kind of hedge our bets, and what we'll do is, let's see, we have 1616. So if we go out here and we go like negative, we go from right here. So that would be -11 and a +12. And then if we do the same point over here, it would be a +10 and a +12. So we'll kind of remember that. -11 +12 and -10 +12 in X and Y in that order. Close that up. We're going to go to the enemy object. We're going to go to the create event. And in the create event, we're going to start with an alarm countdown. And that way we can automatically make the this alarm like set up an alarm so that we can fire automatically. So I'm going to set it up for 150 steps. That's 5 seconds. And then when that alarm goes off, we need to add that event. When that alarm goes off, we're going to go ahead and do three things. We're going to create 2 lasers at the spots I said, and we're going to reset the alarm to that 150 seconds or 150 steps for. So I'm going to do that real quick. That's an easy one. Both these we're going to create an object enemy laser. One of them we needed to be -11 relative and 12 relative from the center of that. And then we're going to do a +10 and a +12 relative. So it'll look like it's firing from the cannons. So now what I should see when I run is I should see lasers coming at me first of all. So I'm going to have to move out of the way. It's going to wait 5 seconds and it's going to fire. I killed him before he could kill me. Now let's test and make sure that the player dies after being hit. Okay, and so we're going to wait. Just going to wait. Here comes one. There's 1. We'll count it. Here's 2. Here's 3. Oops, and now we notice, and the 2 lasers, the dual laser must have hit a couple of other times then, is what I'm thinking. But I can verify that by getting a little further out. Could be just our collision mask is off a little bit, but I'm going to try just to get hit by the 1 laser. Whoops, missed both of them. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4. And there's 5, and they're destroyed. So that's all we were going to do with this one. We'll be ready for the next one.